America, my name is Osei-Frimpong. I come to you live every Thursday about this time. And today we're going to talk a little bit about Tuberville from Alabama. Then we're going to talk a little bit about Kanye West. We're even going to hit up Ms. Martinez down in Los Angeles. 3 different parts of these United States, if you think that Kanye West is from Chicago, which he often claims, and rightfully so. So that's the South, that's Chicago, that's Los Angeles, all of it anti-black in a very interesting way. And I don't think Kanye West is anti-black. He's just reacting in a way, but it's expressed in a way that's fascinating. So we're just going to talk about it a little bit. And let's go with Tuberville first. So this is Tuberville talking at a rally in Nevada to his faithful. And we'll figure out who the faithful are. But he's a senator from Alabama.
Some people say, well, they're soft on crime. No, they're not soft on crime. They're pro-crime. They want crime. They want crime because they want to take over what you got. They want to control what you have. They want reparation because they think the people that do the crime are owed that. Bull. Some people say, well, they're soft on crime. No, they're not soft on crime. They're pro-crime. They want crime. They want crime because they want to take over what you got. They want to control what you have. They want reparation because they think the people that do the crime are owed that. Bull. Some people.
That was a segment so nice, I ran it twice. And what does that mean? Who is he talking to and who is he talking about? Black people, he was talking about, when he said that they want reparations, he was conflating criminals with black people and saying he was not us, right? So when people say like, I mean, you can't call the whites. Yeah, who do you think they were that he was referring to? And who do you think the us, our, that personal pronoun that he was referring to? He was talking about the whites and they were talking about the blacks. I just say the whites and the blacks because I'm not into using personal pronouns so much as I'll call the proper name, capital whites, capital W whites. So the whites are worried about us taking their stuff, and that's what he's worried about, and that's how he's ginning up the whites in protection of their stuff, their ill-got gains. The problem is their stuff isn't legitimately there. So what he's doing, first of all, we got to get rid of the notion that there is, somehow enough for everybody. No, some people are going to have to take a haircut. Some people's quality of life and expectations are going to have to take a hit if black people are going to be made whole, because so much of America and American aspirations and life plans depend on a racial hierarchy that's not going anywhere, right? That needs to be maintained, right? So he's worried about these people are going to screw up the hierarchy that undergirds your life. You make black people whole, like that's going to take something from you. And they're right. I think we're going to take something from Yes. White people who expect their kids to have the same perks and if those perks include being able to treat black people like garbage, like trash, they expect their kids to be able to have the same perks that they have. Those perks are going to go away. And in a state like Alabama or Georgia, where there are a lot of black people, that means a world where we have to actually share power with black people is going to look markedly different. It's going to look a lot different. And he's saying it's gonna feel like they're taking your stuff, and he's right. It's gonna feel like we're taking your stuff because the stuff shouldn't be yours. It's like going to someone who stole your car and then taking your car back. They're gonna feel like you took their car, but it's okay. The car was never theirs. Or even, or let's say working laundry through a few generations, the car was still never theirs, right? So the idea that the whites will unify around not paying reparations or making black people whole is something that we have to actually consider, because that's the defining characteristic of white identity, which is why other people who are not pigmentation-wise white can become white as long as they're willing to treat black people, especially descendants of slaves, like trash. As long as you're willing to treat black people like trash, you are honorary white, provisionally. I did another episode on provisional whiteness and how that could be taken away if you beat white people at their own game. They get mad. Just ask Asians in California. They started scoring too well on the SAT, so now the SAT doesn't mean anything. So if you're willing to treat black people like trash, you can be considered provisionally white. And that's what they unify around. And that is a problem if you care about black justice. It's also a problem if you think, well, we should all just unify around a working class identity. No, white people don't want their kids to necessarily be working class. They want their kids to enjoy the perks of whiteness. And they definitely don't want their kids to be treated like we treat black people. So they'll unify around that before they'll unify around working class identity. That's not the identity. That's not the aspiration they have for their kids. The aspirations and the identities they have for their kids are not to be treated like Negroes. And if that means making sure we treat Negroes like Negroes, that's what they're going to pass on. So this idea that you get to pick and determine what other people unify around, what identities unify around, or you can just kind of ignore what they unify around, that's ridiculous. That's like people in Palestine or Jews in Nazi Germany deciding to ignore the Nazis unifying around like Aryan identity. Well, we could all just be working class. You don't have to unify around. You should just recognize yourself as a German or recognize yourself as a human. And where they're like, no, we want to recognize ourselves as Nazis and Aryans and your problem. So if you don't understand yourself as the end of their gun, then you're ignorant and naive, and you need to understand the flow. You don't get to determine what other people unify themselves around. You don't get to determine that, especially in a free society, right? We can just call it what it is, and not use the pronouns to hide it. We just need to call it what it is, right? So, and it will feel like a crime. When black people are made whole, white people will feel abused. They will feel like they've been illegitimately stolen from. It will feel like something will take them from. So like this criminalization of justice claims is as old as literally America with, the Boston Tea Party and the fact that the Declaration was the criminal act and the using of crime to thwart the march of justice and progress, and the use of the specter of crime and criminality to thwart the march of progress and justice is as old as the hills, right? So when black people, we will be called criminals when we demand our fair share. and Tuberville is just warming the audience up for that. And the whites know that. And this is, like, you just have to know what you're fighting. If you want to make black people whole. Now, if you're cool with black people being your grandkids, if you're cool with black people being poor for the next 5 generations and degraded for the next 5 generations, just keep on living what you're living. If you're cool, if you're white, you're running this, and you're cool knowing that your grandkids are going to also have to maintain a functional gulag, and have to maintain white supremacy and the racialized systems and all the different ways and spend all the energy. I'll spend all this energy maintaining the same anti-black racism that you spend fighting against, then keep doing what you're doing. But if you actually want a better America, then we have to actually figure out like what the offensive looks like and how the offended are going to feel offended. And they're going to call you criminal. Yeah. So just understand that that's a long discourse that Tuberville is conflating black with criminality with reparations. Is something that is going to be with us until we're made free or made whole, right? So think about that. Now let's go on to Tuberville. Remember, and if you take anything about what I've said in the last few minutes, you don't get to pick what the identity under which your enemy unifies around. And they don't want to unify around working class. They want to unify around white. And that means something when you're in a state in the South with a lot of black people, or just, in general. Okay. So there's that. Now let's deal with, we can switch over to Los Angeles. Now in Los Angeles, there was a few Latino Congress people on a city council people in Los Angeles, which is as big as a congressional district or two, on a call talking about, we got to watch to make sure that people don't go over to the blacks. And that is, that's fine. I don't say that on a conference call. I say this here. And the idea is that they want to shut us out of opportunities in our fair civil society. They want to shut us out of opportunities and they want to hoard opportunities away from us. They want to keep, and black people in LA are not thriving. Like black people who own a house in LA are going to sell their house to someone who's not black because black people are not buying houses. Like the black people who are in LA who own property right now, like, are going to die, and their kids are going to have to sell the house. And that's just going to be black life, because black life is not thriving in LA. And in order for non-black interests to keep either the system of black non-thriving as it is, or to power grab like Latinos are trying to, like, you know, at least some faction of Latinos are, then we need to understand that we're not all on the same team. This black and brown coalition thing there needs to be a meeting, because now Karen Bass tweeted out that it's necessary that the 4 people who are involved in this must be dealt with. But listen, the 4 people who were involved with this were speaking a language, or able to speak a language that they all understood, because there are more than 4 people who are involved in this, right? This might be 4 people on that particular conference call. And that's just one particular conference call. So it's not about dealing with them as individuals. It's about dealing with what is it about racial identity and racial politics that is not working out for black people. And, you know, there was an article that came out, maybe I'll do a show on this before. There was another article that came out that said that, you know, whites will not go to black schools, Latinos want to go to Latino schools, but blacks will go to everybody's schools. Which means that if you want to save America into a multiracial democracy, bet on the blacks, because we're the least clannish. And we're the most open to, like, dealing with everybody. So think about what that means. And you know, there's other data that backs that up. But we're pretty good people. So if you believe in America and you believe in democracy, bet on blacks. And empower them. And if you appreciate what I'm doing, go ahead and go over to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month to keep me doing what I'm doing, because I think I'm contributing a service. And, you know, services cost money in America, right? Everything's run by civil society. Not everything, but a lot of things are run by civil society, market-based civil society, and things cost money. Got to keep lights on, do nice things for my kids, my wonderful kids, and then you know, try to grow the channel. So go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month to keep me doing. Oh, you can go to the Patreon, look me up there, and become a Patreon, and I'll keep doing what I'm doing. Right. So now let's go to Kanye West. Kanye West, fascinating interview that was on Fox, and I'm just going to let it play.
My dad doesn't listen to rap music, and he's like super educated. We opened up a water distribution center in the Dominican Republic together. He's like the original Steve Jobs, but he was getting blocked every which way with all of his ideas. And he didn't have an endless bank account, and he didn't have Instagram. So all these ideas, he had to like take them back and compress them. Like, my dad is the most brilliant person that I know. And we actually have a strained relationship because I was taken from him, because my mom was an actress, so she was a liberal. And my dad would see certain things and say, you know, we should do it this way, we should do it that way. And the people got around my mom and pulled her away, much like, you know, Kim is a Christian, but she has people who want her to go to Interview magazine and put her ass out while she's a 40-something-year-old multi-billionaire with 4 black children. And this is how fashion wants to, how they want to present her. My dad doesn't listen to rap music.
All right, so that was Kanye West talking about it and talking on Tucker Carlson's show. It's a very controversial interview to get, but let me tell you, if I get uninterrupted, unedited time on Tucker Carlson's show, I go, because that's 500 million people, not 550 million people. That's 50 million people. That's like a Super Bowl. He can't reach 50 million people a night. That's ridiculous. That number is made up. I'm gonna call BS on my own number. That's just a number I read. Might not be true. I doubt it's true, because those are Super Bowl numbers, and he does not have Super Bowl numbers. Tucker Carlson. Anyway, Joe Rogan wants to interview me. I'll go on him too. because that's people. There you go. 3.1 million people watch Tucker Carlson, and I would go on too. And like I said, Joe Rogan wants to have me on. I will go on to his show too, and I'll talk to the masses, to the peephole. So that's West talking about his frustrations with dealing with liberals, right? So people say like, why would people hate liberals? Look, in order to have an institution, you need a way of dealing with people and a way of expressing yourself with people that's understood in a convention, right? So a lot of these conventions were bad. So the liberal answer was just like, we can get rid of all conventions and just put up markets. So people can just do what they want when they want to, and everything will just kind of go to a market. Yay. And so people make choices, and then the market will work out the dignity of it. Now, what happens when you submit families to a market logic? That means, well, if you don't like your mother or your father, and you just want to return them or quit if they get old, you can just throw back and get a new one. Right? That might be a problem if you want like a stable family. What happens when you think of politics as markets? Well, if you don't think of when you vote, you just vote the way you like to because you want to, then like you just vote for the person you like, regardless of their vision of the whole. You can just vote for them because you like them. Forget responsibility. That's bad politics. It does work in civil society and markets. If you just want to eat what you want, that's fine. But like in terms of families and politics, it's actually bad because you have to think of a whole unit in a different way than a market relation. But if you think of all relations as market relations, you just do what you want. And you do what the market asks you to do without actually thinking about what the dignity of the whole. And that was what Kanye was worried about with respect to, for example, he said his father would ask for like the family should do certain things and not do certain things. And instead of working it out, they split. And he's like, that's a problem. And he says the same thing happened with Kim Kardashian, his marriage with Kim Kardashian. He's like, well, liberals just want to do what they want to when they want to without actually having to like work it out and think about what these things mean. And that was what he was lamenting. And I lament that too. And if you don't lament that, you are probably bad at things that matter. Every day, is a reminder of how ridiculous liberal parenting is. You better be rich enough for rehab or to screw up to bail out your wastrel child, or just like cut them off and pretend that you didn't screw them up if you're a liberal parent. Cause it's just an awful see. But the alternative of that isn't conservative parenting, because whereas liberals do what they want to when they want to because they want to, conservatives do what they do because it's familiar, because it's tradition. It's traditions for tradition's sake. This is how we've always done it, without the reflection about what sense it makes and like what does it mean, but just because they've always done it. So conservatives will do things the way they've always been done. In America, that's not particularly good for black people. Because what's always been done is anti-black racism. And liberals will just throw away all conventions without actually thinking of it, about like, well, what kind of conventions do we need in order for freedom to be realized in the certain ways it can only be in, like, for example, in a polity or in a family. Not all freedoms are market freedoms, right? So both liberals and conservatives get it wrong, but for different ways. Conservatives conserve traditions because they're traditions without actually reflection about how they realize freedom. So you can't like actually evaluate a good tradition from a bad tradition, or an extraneous tradition, or like a harmful tradition, because you don't you're just conserving it because it's familiar, because it's yours. It's not good because like it can be justified. It's good because it happens to be yours. And that is kind of an awful way. Because your way of life might be consistent with anti-black racism. So that's like kind of an awful way to live life, right? And then liberals would just throw away all traditions, but that means that throws away everything that's not immediate. Like every bound that's not immediately chosen, right? So, that leads to pretty disastrous lives, like without discipline for the other reason. Because if it's not immediately chosen, if you just don't want to do it, if it doesn't spark joy or whatever, you'll toss it. And that includes relationships, people, or things. So both of those are bad ways to raise children. And if you don't want those in your life, there's reasons why. So this is what Kanye was lamenting, and I too lament that. So Kanye, from time to time, makes sense. From time to time, makes sense. I thought he was right on that clip. Divorce rates, especially in Black community, it's like a lot of this is just a confusion about what it means, what things mean. And if you don't know what things mean, liberals will talk to you, and what things mean how you feel at that moment, and then you'll end up screwing up whole lives, right? So his critique of liberalism is appropriate. Now, the conservative alternative of just doing what tradition says because it's tradition, that's also trash. And so there just needs to be a new substantive way. I've put these ways, like dotted these ways on my channel. So go back and look at previous videos about what like a substantive left politics of the family looks like, and what a substantive left critique of governance looks like, and all of these other issues. But just know that the conservative answer, that's anti-Black, and the liberal answer, which is anti-Black just laundered indirectly through the market, neither of them will actually lead to justice for Black people. We need to think through like the conditions of success for all Americans and the conditions of justice for Black Americans who've been degraded for so long. So thank you for your time. And once again, if you appreciate what I do, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50, and I will continue to